I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook baby.
Ben, why are you wearing a hat? Hats aren't allowed on the podcast. It's very disrespectful.
I was having a bad hair day, so
That's true. It was pretty bad.
yeah. I did say you can make fun of me because I was not wearing the hat pre-show. But Joe, I have a bone to pick with you.
What?
Do you not notice anything different about me?
You're wearing a new tie.
You used to notice these sorts of things.
Yeah. You're wearing a different denim jacket. Is that what it is?
Same one I've worn literally every episode.
Did you get like any plastic surgery done, like on your
No,
eyebrows?
Naturally, this good looking.
Did you?
I shaved your cock.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. I didn't notice that.
Did you see my story? I had a fucking awesome mustache.
Oh, you did?
that I was considering. I thought about. I'm like, I should have kept it for the episode because I shaved like an hour ago.
Right.
And I should have just kept it and then just shaved it after the episode. I'll do it next time.
Yeah, I would have noticed that because I don't care about the extremes. Like, give me like the weird gray areas. Like,
it was like
it
was like a Ned Flanders. It was like a Ned Flanders mustache. It was awesome. I'm like, oh man, that thing looks so great. And I jumped the gun, but next time.
Real quick before we dive into the day's topics, I want to talk about something real quick that's very close to me. So everyone, all three of our followers know that I'm a huge fan of the Whiskey A Go-Go, this rock and roll club on the Sunset Strip. So I'm writing an article about it for one of my jobs, and I did a deep dive into the history of the place, and that place is actually a lot cooler than I thought. So I just want to talk about it real quick. So the place was actually founded by a guy who he's got a cool name. It's Elmer
Mr. Go-Go.
Yeah, exactly.
Senor Go-Go.
Whiskey A Go-Go. Oh no, his name was Elmer Valentine, and he was a police officer for a bit in Chicago, which meant that he was corrupt. And he actually worked for the mob for a bit, and then he got indicted for extortion. So he didn't get he wasn't convicted, but he's like, all right, it's getting too hot for me in Chicago. I'm going to go to Los Angeles. And so he moved here. He opened a little club for a little bit that was not the Whiskey. It was successful, but he's like, I'm going to go to Europe. I'm going to start a club in Europe. So he goes to Paris, and there's a club there called the Whiskey A Go-Go. So he's like, hey, so can I just license your name? And I'll because I want to take this back with me. Goes back to LA. He starts the Whiskey A Go-Go. And it's actually the place where go-go dancing, like the Austin Powers, like that's actually where go-go dancing originated from.
At the
Whiskey A Go-Go.
Really?
Yeah. It was totally by accident.
Go-go dancing's like it's like not stripping, but kind of like sexy dancing, but with clothes on.
Yeah, so it's like you have like these elevated platforms with girls and skimpy outfits, and they're doing like the Batman dance, whatever.
Right.
Very Austin Powers. Yeah, that started at the Whiskey A Go-Go. It was actually that's right. I never made the connection, like go-go dancing, Whiskey A Go-Go.
Oh, I assumed that. I didn't know, and I figured it's like over time it changed. Like, they don't have that anymore, right?
No. Well, they do have girls dance there once in a big while, but it's not.
Yeah. I figured that was like old, just like CBGB started as like country bluegrass blues. That's what CBGB stands for.
Right.
And that's what was his name? The guy who started CBGB? It was like he had a weird name. He was actually from New Jersey. But it was like not Harry, but something like that. Anyway, that's what he wanted to start at. It's like this country bluegrass blues bar in the Bowery in like South Manhattan, and it didn't do well. And then obviously everyone knows it for punk because that's what put on the map. It was a dingy, disgusting bar that all these like. It actually wasn't even all punk. It was all types of music. Like Television was the first band that I think really made it big there.
Right.
But then it really became known for punk.
Right.
But they just kept the name because of branding.
Right.
Yeah, so I figured the same thing with Whiskey A Go-Go.
Charles Manson used to hang out there. He even got thrown out because he's being such a weirdo.
He was a weirdo. He was a decent musician though. Like that's what he wanted to be.
Yeah, like he was friends with the Beach Boys and he wrote some songs that were recorded and became hits and stuff.
What like what the dichotomy of like the Beach Boys and Charles Manson. Can you think of like literally pure innocence and like pure evil?
Yeah.
And which I don't think Charles Manson was pure evil at all. Like I think he was a fucking weirdo who like brainwashed a bunch of susceptible youths. And I think the Beach Boys actually were a lot darker than people thought. Like some of them were like in their personal lives were pretty nuts. I don't know enough about it to speak to it, but I think that some of the Beach Boys are like pretty fucked up. But like just from a cultural standpoint, I can't think of two more different icons of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. But I just want to share that because I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I didn't know that all this cool stuff about the whiskey. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you wasted about 5 minutes, but that's fine.
Yeah, well,
no, it is cool. We went to Rainbow, right?
Yeah, we went to the Rainbow.
Yeah, the whiskey.
No.
All right. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
It's
pretty reckless, huh?
Today? That was so reckless, dude. Wait, was that other reckless thing you did last weekend?
I tried to go to Charles Bukowski's gravesite.
Not that part.
Oh, the thing after? Oh, I went to a Latin mass.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's so reckless, bro.
No, it was funny because it was such a wholesome experience, and you know, I went with our friend Kate Clarity, and it was actually great. It was nice because they had like a reception afterwards, and I got to meet some of the like the musicians there. So it's just funny. It's just such a sweet, wholesome thing. It's like, oh, this is nice, just talking to people. We're just nice and just chatting about music and family and things.
Well, I think you need to balance it out a little. You've been hanging out too many Satanist gatherings.
Yeah.
So you know, put a little God in there. Not too much. Don't fill up too much. That'll make the podcast kind of boring. But a little bit's good for it still.
But it was a nice break from the sleazy heavy metal dive bars I usually hang out at. So it was nice to go. But
whatever bar you end up at always is a little sleazier.
I just go to the sleaze.
You might bring it with you, but
or are you saying that it starts off as a nice bar, but when I walk in, then it gets trashy? Okay.
Yes, that's what you caught it. You caught the gist. All right, what bullshit are we talking about today?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk book burning. So that's and J.K. Rowling.
Don't burn witches, not books. Is the new tagline for this pod.
Unless that you can burn evidence. I think burning evidence is fine. I think we're
that would be my legal advice. Is that it's always okay to burn evidence.
So this came about. So normally I would not shine a spotlight on just some like small random weirdo on Twitter, and then use that to paint a whole movement with. But this person, like this went viral, and also like she's hardly the first person to burn J.K. Rowling books. Like, this has been going on for the last few years at least. This person, Tess Hall, they only have about 427 followers right now. If you look at their the description there says in capitals, in capital letters, an ally, an activist. And here's the other thing. Here's so I also wrote an article about this. It's like they pinned the tweet of themselves burning.
Yeah, usually I wouldn't want to like bring attention to something just like a normie. But like she wants to bring attention to herself. Like that's the whole point of this. So continue.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so she's burning. She's it's about 2 minutes long, just over 2 minutes long, and she's kind of giving like this self-righteous monologue about how there's so much hate in the streets, and people are storming, and causing all this harm towards non-binary and trans people, and it's she's like ripping out pages of a Harry Potter book and throwing them into the fire. And so like I have a quote here. I thought it'd be a good time to remind everyone that if we're going to be in the business of book burning, let's make sure we're burning the right books.
Why? Like, okay. So she's not a fan of J.K. Rowling, I suppose.
No. Well, also it's just all it's like I don't care if you disagree with J.K. Rowling's views on whatever, but it's like just donate the books, like give them to someone who's not a complete fucking pussy.
It's a bad look, and I guess I've said it before. I've thrown out one book in my life. It was a trash book about the Crusades. I did think about just donating it, but it was like so hyper political and one-sided. And I looked it up and I was like, am I going nuts? Like, is this? And people are like, look, I'm pretty liberal, but this book is like, some of the reviews are like that. It's like, I'm pretty progressive, but this book is ridiculous. Like it's like it's a historical book that's ahistorical. So I didn't feel bad throwing it out. Like Harry Potter's a novel. I read books all the time. I don't like try and finish all of them, and I do donate them. Like, or I have a used paperback place near me where you get store credit, so I'll give them to that. I'll kind of give them there for store credit and get other books. But yeah, burning the book itself is such like it does matter. It's like there are different. Like it's symbolic of something more, and I don't mean to put $1 in the Nazi jar here, but like that was one of the most significant kind of that was one of the most significant things I think the Nazis did that is still culturally used today. That's like a warning sign. It's like, no, there aren't gas chambers anymore today. So it's like there's the most horrific part of the Nazis, but it's like, okay, but that's not applicable anymore. Like there isn't these mass executions, at least not in the free world or whatever. But like burning books is something like that's an indication. Like when people start saying like, were there signs? It's like, yeah, this is one of them. Yeah. Is the book burning. No, I'm not saying that we're gonna have like a Nazi regime or anything, but like authoritarians, they want to control things and destroy art that they find objectionable. Yes. And not just criticize it, but actually destroy it. Right. I do think that begs the question right now, because if someone listening was of that persuasion, they would say like, well, okay, what about Florida and like DeSantis and stuff? I'm like, well, no, that is a difference. When they're not burning books, they're taking them out of like elementary school libraries or something and putting them in public libraries where the students can go. Like it does matter. There is a distinction. Yes. And it's disingenuous to say otherwise. Right. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I definitely have some concerns about, the Republican Party, banning certain books in schools. And, sometimes I agree with it. Like if it's basically pornographic, it's like, this should not be in an elementary school. But then there are other times where it's like, as much as I disagree with Ibram X. Kendi, like it's not going to hurt anybody if it's in a public library. But, exactly. But at the same time, like what I wrote in the article that I covered about this, which is like, intelligent people fight ideas with ideas, and dumb people fight ideas with backyard fire pits.
Yeah,
like,
fire.
This is burn the idea. I actually have a quote here. This is an excerpt from the official Nazi Party newspaper. From the actual.
Wait, from like present day?
No, from the 30s.
Look who's the publisher.
No, so this is an excerpt from I don't know how to pronounce this. V. Bielbachter. I don't know. Anyway, this is
from like the German composers. You can figure it out.
Yeah. But this was from like 1933. The German Students Association of the Berlin Universities assembled yesterday at the Hegelplatz, and then, taking along several truckloads of 25,000 books and writings undermining the spirit of the German people, marched to the Obernplatz, where they, in a symbolic action, threw these un-German writings into the flames of a pyre. It's like they're just celebrating it. Like that's so disgusting. But like it's such a similar attitude that Tess Hall was showing of like, this is offensive to trans people, therefore we should get rid of it, and let's celebrate the burning of this thing that's very untrans.
And what's even worse is that the book itself actually is not at all. It's Harry Potter. It's not like it's Abigail Schreier's book. I'm blanking on the name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. She wrote that book,
Irreversible Damage.
Right, the rapid onset.
It's like it's not even something like that where it'd still be bad, but at least the logic would connect. It's like I don't like this thing. I don't want anyone else to be influenced by this particular thing. Destroy this thing. That's not the case here. You just object to the author's views.
Right.
So it's quite the leap.
It is, and it's funny because like I wrote this article called "Nazism and Wokeness: Book Burning Still Exists, Just Without the Fire." So go ahead and put me in the Nazi jar for this one. But like, so this was in response. This is in response to in Georgetown University. This was in 2020, where a bunch of students went to the school library, went to the college library, and they didn't read any of the books. They took books off the shelves that they thought looked offensive. They just looked at the covers and said, "Oh, it portrays Native Americans in a negative way," and they took all these. So they stormed the library, and they got rid of all these books.
They tossed them as they threw them out.
Yeah, they threw them out. And so, like, I thought I was being hyperbolic in 2020 by saying book burning still exists, but in a different form. But then, like, Tess.
I'm gonna cut you off, but I don't think anyone could be hyperbolic in 2020. You were allowed to be hyperbolic. Everyone was just hyperbolic. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but and so, like, I thought, oh, this is a little too edgy, but fuck it, I'll go for it. But it's like, no, and also, like, we've all seen like there have been like TikTok trends of people like filming themselves burning J.K. Rowling books over the last few years. So it's like this has turned into a weird trend.
So I've been listening to a great podcast. It's all about this. Right now there's 7 chapters. I think they're doing 10. I'm not sure. It's called The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling.
Oh yeah.
Rolling. I always say that wrong. It's actually Rolling, like J.K. Rowling. And it kind of starts from her beginning. So like I learned a lot about her. So let's start actually with ourselves. Like, were you a Harry Potter fan?
Yeah, I was. I read the first 4.
What a fucking loser.
I read them just so I could make fun of them. Well, it's funny. So she took a long ass time, if I remember correctly, between the 4th and the 5th book. And by that time, I entered high school, and so that was like, okay, now I'm on the football team, and I'm playing guitar now, and I love heavy metal and horror movies. So when the fifth book did come out, I was like,
You're just like reading them in your room, and like, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I got a younger sister who loves Harry Potter.
She comes like, "Hey, what are you doing? There ain't nothing. Leave me alone, Mom. Go away. Play guitar. Read static books. Shut up." Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Oh man, but yeah, I was a big Harry Potter fan for a bit.
Well,
what about you?
No, I was not. I remember I do have fond memories of my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Webb, who would read to us, and I vividly remember her reading. Do you ever read the book Skellig?
I don't think so.
It's about well, spoiler alert, he's an angel. And he's like this creature hiding in this garage, and I think his family moves to this new house. They made a movie, actually. I don't think it was very good, but it was like a YA novel, but it's like this creature living in the garage. It turns out he's like a fallen angel or something. I remember crying a lot. And it like stuck with me. I'm like, holy shit, like this grown woman is just crying in front of me. Who's not, I don't know. Anyway, she was a great teacher. Shout out Mrs. Webb. And I remember her reading Sorcerer's Stone to us, which would have been like shortly after it came out. Cause I think it was maybe not like a year. I think I was in 4th grade, like 99, 2000. I think that those are the years. I'm not positive. And I remember that was like a nice memory, and being very invested in it. I think I read the 2nd and the 3rd, but I didn't. And I think I stole the 4th one from my classroom. I kind of had a little klepto phase. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this. But I think I never read it. It was a real dick move. Yeah. Not proud of it. But
you're a lawyer too. Like, aren't you?
I know. Statute of limitations, though. But I can't remember if I stole it or if I took it for a while and returned it. So I could remember.
Oh, well, now your story's changing.
Yeah, now your story's changing. But no, I never really got into Harry Potter. I was more like Lord of the Rings fantasy, and now obviously like Game of Thrones. But that's by far my favorite.
Yeah, I was into Limp Bizkit at the time.
Oh, I was too. I thought they were like the coolest things ever. I thought like Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park were the coolest. Kid Rock, Eminem, any of those guys. But no, I wasn't really into Harry Potter, and so I never really cared. Like my whole thing was when I was going through that like mid 2010s. When I say I was going through my shit lib phase, when I would like read BuzzFeed a lot at my internship, and I'd go like BuzzFeed books, and like every article is just about Harry Potter. Sometimes Game of Thrones, like Harry Potter. I'm like, guys, there are other books out here than Harry fucking Potter. But that being said, I've seen all the movies. One of my girlfriends, I think my college girlfriend, was like really into them, so we watched like all the movies.
Yeah,
and I like them. Like I'm not anti it.
Sure.
And I've always said I think it's great that it got a generation into reading, like a lot, like not just reading, like reading long books.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I remember one of my cousins waiting in line, buying the book, devouring it like that night, maybe 2 days. Like I think Goblet of Fire, which was like a very long one.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So I think that's great, but no, I was never into Harry Potter.
Yeah, I watched a few of the movies.
They're fun.
Yeah, they're entertaining. But yeah, and you know, I'm sure we've talked about J.K. Rowling before, but it's like she's not anti-trans or anything. Like she's a very progressive feminist. Like
so let's get into that. Yeah. So I learned a lot about her in this podcast. One, like she was the victim of severe domestic violence, which, as you know, with my job, I listened to her and I could just see that with some of my clients, and and she was poor. Like her mom died at a very young age, and she was struggling, and she was in this really abusive relationship, and like to like not just like a one and done type thing, like even after you just like the hiding, which is really terrifying. Like it's one thing to have to go through something and endure that and then to get out, but then to be constantly looking over your shoulder is like so terrifying. And then like kind of how she had the inspiration for the story, I thought that's very cool. Like as a writer myself, just how she would be on the train and coming up with ideas and writing them down while going to her day job and things like that. But anyway,
she also inspired by a bit by Christianity in the Bible. Like, weren't there like certain like sort of, I guess, motifs or ideas that she got from?
This didn't really talk when Christians come up in this podcast. It's not in a good way. They were very, you know, because that's where it starts. So because it's chronological, it shows that how crazy this horseshoe has gotten with who is attacking her. And for years in the late 90s into the 2000s, it was the right. It was the religious right who believed that this was turning kids into like wanting them to
witchcraft and black magic.
Like witchcraft, black magic, Satan worship, those sorts of things, which is so comical now to think about it. It's like so silly. That out of everything you could criticize, like, look, I could see if like certain movies out there that were real horrific, like you don't want children seeing that, of course, like criticizing this, like Harry Potter, and how like this one preacher was talking about how the lightning scar on his forehead was like an SS symbol or something, like connecting it to Nazism. Anyway, but how pervasive that was, and how it was real. Like the religious right really had power at one point, at least, especially in the U.S., that we don't really consider anymore. A little bit of that came up with the Hobbes decision and abortion, but that was more like just the culmination of years and years of like a Reconquista type movement. But anyway, it's really interesting to hear this, and I should have started the host of this podcast, which is so interesting, was she grew up in the Westboro Baptist Church. She had left it. And so she and not as like, okay, she was 5 and then she left it. Like, no, she was into it into her 20s. Where when you start to get that age, you really start to become like firm in some beliefs.
Right.
She was
Megan Roper? Was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, she has a hyphen name. It's something Roper, but yeah, that's her.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know you know who she was. And what's so cool about her is I've heard, was she on Rogan?
Yeah, she was on Rogan. So
she was on Rogan. Okay. So I think I've heard either her on it or him talk about her, how what changed her was the exact sort of stuff that we talk about, was like dialogue and free speech and communication. How what really won her over weren't the people who were calling her a bigot and a piece of shit, like, which she was. Like, don't get me wrong, those who were Baptist Church are monsters. Like, they're terrible fucking people that always disgusted me, even when I was like a pretty staunch conservative. I was like, these are the kind of people that give us a bad name. Like, who anytime like a Muslim does anything or an atheist does anything, it's like, okay, but what about the Westboro Baptist Church? They're like, well, fuck, they just got out of here. Like, we don't have this problem. But that and that's how she left it, was just like hearing logic and reason and other arguments and talking to people, and people who treated her like, I don't know if respect is the right word, but like listened and then attacked her views and her ideology, not attacked her as a person, which is like credit to those people, because like, I don't know, man, protesting a dead soldier's funeral is like pretty fucked. The restraint you have to have. But anyway, so I just went on a little bit there. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, well, I want to point, you're talking about sort of like the horseshoe or aspect. So I should have mentioned this in the article, and I might even go in to expound on this some more. In 2001, the Alamogordo Christ Community Church in New Mexico burned hundreds of copies of the Harry Potter books. Jack Vrock, leader of the church, said the books were an abomination because they inspired children to study the occult. So before, it's like you have like ultra Christian conservative types burning Harry Potter books, and now you have ultra woke activists burning Harry Potter books,
and there's like no self-awareness.
Exactly.
Like nothing, absolutely no self-awareness at all, which is hilarious. But yes, and so through this, so they do an episode or two of like, you listen to people and it's almost like it feels like something you would make up. Like if you wanted to make a really evil movement, you would make these people up who are just using their religion as pretext to attack children's novels. But these were all, of course, real, like very real. And she had death threats and she had bomb scares. But I will say, and I don't know how they're going to wrap this up, but it sounds like, and this may have something to do with modern technology and the ability to contact people and the internet improving, exponentially. But like what the left now, jumping all the way to her current attackers of like the last 3 years or so, 4 years, it seems much worse. Like it does. It legitimately sounds much worse, because at least, while I think that the religious right, I think it was pretext that they wanted to protect the children. Like these people, the pretext is so, like the logic is so, I think, disjointed that it just, like a perfect example would be like a tweet to her that's suck my girl dick and die, you stupid cunt, hashtag just be kind. And it's like what? And there's like an insurmountable quantity of that. She has had lots of credible threats to both like her and her family. And then, of course, we can go into like the canceling and all of that stuff, which hasn't worked. I think she has even I think her sales have increased, if anything.
There's that Harry Potter, I think it's a game, Harry Potter Legacy or something that came out recently, and there was a thing where a bunch of like activist types, SJWs, where we're like, oh, let's boycott it. But then like it ended just like the sales just like went through the roof. Like so it's just
I don't know what that is. Like I don't know if that's people proactively being like, well, this group like I didn't care, but this group who I'm against is against this, I'm going to go support it. I'm sure there's some of that, because like there are people who do that. That's fine. I think people on all sides do that. I don't know if it's just somehow she's getting more attention, and Harry Potter's already the most popular IP in young adult, maybe in the world. Like, I don't know. But I guess maybe it's exposing it to more people. I don't know if that's true, but it's really insane, the level of hatred that she receives, and how people, one, feel entitled to like her creation. And that's one thing as a creator and a writer, I was like, you're not entitled to my work. Like if you enjoy it, fantastic. If you don't, that's fine. But like, I don't have to write to you, right? Or I don't have to appeal to you and my political decisions or what I think. Like that's so, I think, disturbing to me that people really feel that way. I guess I've never felt that way. Whether it's a director or a writer or whoever, it's like, okay, they say some dumb shit, but they're a good actor, so like I'm gonna watch their movies. I don't know, it never bothered me. If they say dumb shit enough that I don't like, it's a balance. It's like, well, my $16 movie ticket, I really don't like what they're saying. Do I want to see this movie enough? Do I want it to be a notch in that box office? Like, I don't know. It comes down to that. And we've always said, I think we agree, like, boycotting isn't cancel culture.
Yeah.
Like it's not. Like, you don't have to go do anything.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally respect people's decision. If they're like, I don't want to support this creator, that's fine.
Sure.
Like, that's you making a decision for yourself.
Yeah.
But when it starts getting to the point of, you're getting
stopping
other
people.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You can boycott, but you can't block the entrance to let other people go. So like that's the difference. And like,
is there
like,
a legal term for that? Is it like
to what?
To
stopping someone from.
Yeah, it was like the it's not mob rule, it's like crowds. I saw this recently because there was a debate recently about like a conservative. I think it was the Stanford thing from like a month ago of like how some ostensibly right-wing person was giving a talk at Stanford, I think, and then and they were essentially like pushed off the stage. And
I think it was a judge, right?
Yeah, it was a judge.
Yeah, it was a judge.
And I saw some woke people on Twitter saying, well, the protesters, they were just exercising their free speech. But it's like, yeah, but you were blocking the sound of the person giving the speech. Like, that's not fair. Like, it's one thing to go outside and protest outside, but it's like, if people want to go inside, let them. Like, but there was some legal term for like where your speech starts to get in the way of other people listening to speech. I think there's. I'll look it up.
I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell.
I saved it somewhere, but I'll dig it up. But
yeah, because like that would just be you're stopping them from exercising their free speech. Are you saying more from like the audience, like not letting someone hear something?
Right. But there was some decision from the 70s where it basically kind of ruled against mobs from doing that. Where it's like, yeah, you can protest, but if it starts preventing other people from listening to a speech, like that's when you're crossing the line there. There's some legal term for it. I'll look it up and send it your way. You probably find it interesting, but
yeah, I would. I'm trying to think because I know the Skokie case, that was part of it. It was like they could speak, like the neo-Nazis in Illinois could speak, but there were so many counter protesters. It was like they were kind of drowned out. I don't know. Like, you're right, that does defeat the purpose, but I don't know. It becomes tricky. Like, it's not always simple because there are a lot of variables to, if it's like indoors and if there's like a stage, if you're just being like, you don't get to go to a Broadway show or a movie and just stand up and start screaming and disrupting everything and not expect to be removed.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. It would just be, it's just like that mini contract that's on your ticket when you get it. It's like you can be removed from that place if you're not following whatever rules they have. It's not like you can't just fall back on, my free speech. It's like, no, you're screaming during Wicked or something. That's not how it works. But I don't know about the legal term for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll look it up, and it might be worth doing an episode on that or touching on it. But yeah, yeah. J.K. Rowling.
Well,
so
also,
real quick, how is that podcast?
Really good.
Yeah,
it's really good. It's one of those things where, so I only heard about it because the first episode I think was on Barry Weiss's podcast.
Yeah.
So she just kind of played it to support it. I don't know if they're in the same like network or whatever. But I mean, this girl, Megan Roper, she's kind of the poster child for what kind of Barry Weiss and that group stand for. It's like the good ideas will win out. And that's the best example. You had the most acerbic idea ever, like some of the shittiest ideas ever, dehumanizing, nasty, like not just a matter of opinion, like doing exactly what we were just talking about, going to funerals and protesting people's lowest points in their lives. And speech beat that out of her. Not clubs, not fists. Speech beat that out of her. And that's really what this kind of University of Austin, I think that's what it's called, group, the heterodox group, whatever you want to call them, they believe in, which so do I. Like that's what I believe in too. Unfortunately, lots of times the people on that side with those views don't want to. They want to be in their echo chambers. They don't want to hear any other viewpoints because they know that it's fragile. It's not about being it's not, I don't want to say it's about being right or wrong, but it's not about like, they just want to be validated. Like, and even one of the, I don't mean to jump around too much, but even they had a trans woman on who was also kind of been a victim of cancel culture, but is also very much a critic of Rowling. So kind of wavers here and there, like, okay, they understand that sometimes this ultra pronouncing gets out of hand and there is this mob rule, but also they kind of, or she kind of criticizes Rowling in the same way that other people do, and is very timid or tepid on her criticisms of the violent rhetoric. But what she says is these people, their power comes in on the internet because they have so little power in real life, and that's why they do this, which to me is not an excuse. Like, the internet fucks with people just as much as in person. In fact, it's made it, I think, so much worse because people don't see the repercussions of their speech. But so that's why this group, because it's kind of like she acknowledges that these, I call them attack helicopters, these activists. I don't mean that in a trans way. Like, no, they're not not all trans people are like this. Except the vast majority actually are not. It's this subset of activists. Who some of them aren't even trans, but they are, and it's this it's a super gendered, it's the Tumblrification of gender and science or whatever, and they're vicious. Like, it is absolutely insane. They're kind of like, they feel like berserkers or crusaders, just high on their convictions, scaling the walls of Jerusalem and slaughtering everyone, Christians included.
This reminds me of a letter that Helen Keller wrote. It was an open letter that she wrote to the German student, the Nazi students who were burning books, because she does a great mind, I think, of sort of like illuminating that authoritarian mindset of like, we are the gatekeepers of ideas, and we think that the best way to fight bad ideas is to just burn them and destroy them and to shame those associated with them. And it's a great letter here. I just want to read a quick little excerpt of it. To the student body of Germany, history has taught you nothing if you think you can kill ideas. Tyrants have tried to do that before, and the ideas have risen up in their might and destroyed them. You can burn my books and the books of the best minds in Europe, but the ideas in them have seeped through a million channels and will continue to quicken other minds. I have all the royalties of my books for all time to the German soldiers blinded in the World War, with no thought in my heart but love and compassion for the German people. I acknowledge the grievous complications that have led to your intolerance. All the more do I deplore the injustice and unwisdom of passing on to unborn generations the stigma of your deeds. That's
Helen Keller was German?
No, I thought she was British. I thought she was from England. No, so she makes reference to the world. So this is in 1933. So I'm assuming she was referring to World War I.
Yeah, she was.
I'm not a history guy, so I don't know anything about wars. But World
War I was 1914 to 1917.
Yeah, so it's interesting that she said that she had royalties from her works going to German soldiers. During that time.
I guess I don't know. That's why I said she's German, but if she's British, then World War I was so fucked.
Yeah,
but so maybe we should say though, like, what actually Rowling has said and done, which is like, not like, honestly, I'm not just saying, like, I kind of agree with everything she's saying. Like, I don't think it's like not controversial at all. Like, she criticized people who menstruate and was like, there used to be a word for this. It's like, I do get this erasure of women, and has the same concerns that, like, if you look at polling, which when you start talking about polling, some people's like eyes gloss over, but it is important, and like good polling, like Pew and Gallup, these are some of the most credible polling. Like, actually, super majorities of Americans, if we're just sticking with America, I know she's not, like, super majorities of Americans believe like trans people should have rights and not be discriminated against, and of course should exist. And by the way, if you want to talk intersectional pretzels here, like, And the same like Pew Research poll found like 66% of Black people don't like believe trans people exist, like should exist, or whatever it is. And that, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but that's not really whenever they talk about anti-trans hatred, they always just connect it to white supremacy, which like a lot of these social polls, when it comes like social liberalism, like white people usually score the most liberal.
Yeah.
Like in the West or in the US, maybe sometimes with Asians, like usually Black and Latino are more conservative.
Yep.
Anyway, so that so it's not like we don't think trans people should exist, as in supermajorities of Americans. Where that support creators is when it comes to specific issues of like trans women in women's bathrooms, trans women in women's sports, child like surgeries, like trans surgeries for children, like people under 18, which to me is like, can you get a tattoo before you're 18?
Yeah.
I'm serious. Can you at 16? Like, I don't know.
I'm not sure, actually.
Well, like, you can't do a lot of shit before you're 18.
Right.
So, but you could potentially ruin your entire life. Like you could, like for girls and for girls who are transitioning to boys, it's like you could never have children.
Yeah.
You could never, if you have was it double mastectomy?
Yeah.
You could, obviously can't breastfeed.
Yeah.
You could never have an orgasm again, which is like, that's I don't know. I'm being serious. Like, I'm not fucking joking like this. Like, that's a joy of life.
Yeah.
Like to share that with a partner or someone you love, like that's something important.
Right.
And to take that away from someone at the age of 15.
Right.
And so that's where this support craters. But if you say this stuff in so many forums and so many like so many places in this country, you will get eviscerated, not because you're necessarily even in the minority, but because the majority won't speak up for you because they're terrified. Because this is this minority mob rule in this area, where if they don't physically hurt you, they will try and get you fired. They will like libel you, like all of these things, defame you, and really just make your life hell, dox you, all these things, because you hold views that actually the vast majority of Americans hold.
Right.
And it's not a hateful way.
Exactly. And it's crazy, just how trans activism runs afoul of, first off, like the LGBT or the LGB groups, which has suffered a lot over the decades, right? And then women who have suffered quite a bit in this country as well. And so J.K. Rowling kind of speaks to both of these in one of her offending tweets. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. And it's like, it's like when you just kind of throw biology out the window, it's like, well, then homosexuality doesn't mean anything then? Being a woman doesn't mean anything now? It's absolutely nuts.
Well, yeah. And then of course you saw women from these groups, women all of a sudden like fucking came back, like just reappeared once abortion was, the abortion was illegal federally during the Hobbs decision. All of a sudden it was like women this, women that. It's like, well, where are you guys? We're talking about uterus possessors and fallopian tube containers and menstruators, people who menstruate. It's like, because at the time that was fitting your narrative, but now it doesn't for this particular fight with abortion. So again, I try and look like I'm not just saying this to hedge my bets, to be like, no, I agree, like I'm on the side of the majority and all these things, and we fetishize democracy in this country. But like, no, like if there was a view that I held that is in the minority considered like a hateful view, I'd still say it, and maybe I could be convinced others. But I don't, like, these are my personal views. Like trans is very much a thing. I think it's part of gender dysphoria, and I think it sucks for people who genuinely suffer from this. And I don't think there's never been a better time to be trans, and you should get the help that you need and support that you need. You absolutely should not be discriminated against in any way. But that's, but there are going to be issues that are going to naturally come up because we've had two genders forever.
And like all of the crazy elements get in the way of having like reasonable and humane discussions about how to accommodate trans people. Because like so somebody pointed this out on Twitter, and of course they got a ton of shit for it. But they said, if the trans movement was about helping trans people who were, say, wrongfully terminated from their jobs or being wrongfully evicted from their homes, it's like, okay, you can get a lot of widespread support even from like moderates and conservatives. But instead, so much of it is like, if you disagree with our new take on biology, then you're a bigot. If you as a straight man refuse to go out with a woman who has a penis, then you're a bigot. And it's like you have to obey all these crazy new rules that just popped up out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, you're not making it easy.
That's part of it too, is that the rules do, just like you said, pop out of nowhere, and you have to comply or else. Which are absurd. Like some of those are absurd. Like, you have to tell me who I'm attracted to now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if I'm not attracted to this type of, like, that is such dystopian, like authoritarian craziness, like bad shit craziness, that if I don't find this genitalia attractive, I am a fascist. Like, what? That's the craziest one. I don't know how much support that actually gets, like enough.
You still see it cropping up a lot on Twitter, but
but like, if I didn't, like, I do believe that there are issues with Leah Thomas winning by a literal mile at some of these swim meets. Like, and just everyone has to be like, I feel like it's like the emperor's new clothes or whatever. It's like, nope, I'm not gonna say anything. Like, gonna this is totally normal. Do not say anything. And I do, or like when people, when you read an article, it's like a woman rapes 8-year-old or something, and you're like, holy shit, like what? Like a woman, and you look, and she's got a beard. And it's like, all right, well, okay, that's are we really gonna just be like, nope, nothing to see here. That is a woman who raped an 8-year-old, and we just have to, that's fine. Put her in the women's prison. This violent sexual offender in the women's prison. And then when that woman rapes a bunch, it's like all of a sudden violent sexual assault skyrockets amongst women. It's like, well, why the fuck do you think that happened?
It's so confusing. Like the headlines that this is caused. Like you might have seen this one floating on Twitter like within the last week, where it was like a trans woman at an airport felt violated when a TSA agent accidentally bumped her testicles or something like that. And it was just like
yes, so exactly. Right. So it's the same. It's like, I'm trying to find where I am not, like, where I'm actually in a minority in any of this. And I know it shouldn't just be minority majority, but like, no, like at her views, and yes, I think there are going to be some people, and she says, Megan, I'll just call her Megan, asks her, like, what do you think about the criticism that this is fueling the right? And she's like, no, you're not you, but like, you making this criticism, you're the ones fueling the right, because the right has been saying for years, basically the slippery slope argument, that if we let gay marriage this, or we make it even before that to be gay acceptable and all these things, eventually it's going to come to this, and it's going to be like children, like young girls having to share a locker room with a dangling set of balls. And it's like, we don't have, why do we have to not inconvenience even, but like traumatize or potentially put young girls in danger, or prisoners in danger, or women athletes at a huge disadvantage to satisfy a tiny minority of people.
Right.
Like I don't get it, and I don't get why more people can't just say no to this. And I think more of it has happened. I actually think is it the Olympics or the NCAA has changed their rules about this? I know, like the UK and Sweden, they've completely stopped this gender affirming care, and which is fantastic. And I think a lot of this comes down to, like, Rowling and myself included, I think we're of the belief, it's like, no, if you like go through the surgeries and you have like had the medication and you've identified like this for a long time, it's like, that you're a trans woman or you're a trans man or whatever it is, like, that's totally fine. These are people who are like predators, will, like, that's all that's on their mind. Like I've heard this from, not in person, obviously, but like from doctors and psychologists. It's like sexual deviants and sexual predators, like child molesters. It's like all they think about, and they will find any way to get to these vulnerable populations. And it's already happened like many, many times.
Right.
So for you to say like, oh, that's fueling the right, when the right is just pointing out what's going on. Like you can't gaslight an entire country, like, or half of a country of 320 million people. And they're going to get more moderate support, center left support. And it's like, that really what you want? I don't know. And I think some people on the right do have bad intentions. I do think some of them who, like people like Matt Walsh and even Ben Shapiro, who I'll agree with on some things, like, no, I do disagree with them on these things. I do, like, they don't think trans should even exist, I believe. And that's wrong. Like, no, I think it's totally, I think all this other craziness, like non-binary stuff and two-spirit and every sort of gender, it's like, no, like trans is you transition from one to the other. Right. But no, and I think people on the right are using this also as like their Trojan horse. I mean, like, okay, but every political group, like everyone's gonna always try and do that. It doesn't mean you have to stand up for your values and for vulnerable populations.
Right. Real quick, so in that tweet that I just read of J.K. Rowling saying, I know and love trans people, and then Mara Wilson, who played Matilda back in the 90s, she says, she responded, I assure you they do not love you back. Real quick, do you know who Mara Wilson's related to?
We've talked about this before. I can't remember who.
It's Ben Shapiro. She's his cousin.
That's right. Yes.
I don't think I've heard him talk about their connection, but I've heard her say that she refuses to talk to him. Well, it's really like, oh, they actually, I see some resemblance there. It's weird, but it's like someone who's ultra woke and someone who's ultra conservative.
I'm sure she's very level-headed and reasonable in her approach to these issues. I want to add something else because we did kind of jump around here. Trying to think, like I think there's also a difference. For instance, even at my most, I think, Republican conservative, even at that time, like I never gave a shit about gay marriage. Like I would say I even supported it. Right. Like I did. I was like, okay, like they can get married. Who gives a shit? Yeah. And my view was, it doesn't affect me. Like it doesn't affect anyone. Like I'm not gonna all of a sudden wake up like, fuck, I'm married to a man. God damn it. Like
you got Shanghai. You got Shanghai and ended up in Castro Street in San Francisco.
God, Jesus, how did this happen? Slippery slope. Like, was it Modern Family where the old neighbor Phil's trying to get the old neighbor to go vote. He's like, hey, if I vote, next thing I'll be married to a man. It's like, I don't think it's mandatory. Anyway, the sidebar. Anyway, I supported what I always say is like I supported gay marriage before Barack Obama, and I was like a McCain voting Republican, and he was like the most liberal candidate we ever had. But so people who were against that stuff I was like, why do you care? Like, why does it matter to you?
And now you're like, oh, I understand. I agree with you now.
Yeah, now I'm like, right on, man and woman, man, that's it. Or woman's cool too. No, I'm kidding. Get married to whoever you want. But I think here it's like, no, this isn't an equal comparison. It's like people like J.K. Rowling, like we're trying to protect people, like we're trying to protect children, protecting the rights of another group, the fairness of another group. It's like the gay marriage thing was just, I don't like that. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what that does. That makes me feel icky. Like that's not what's going on here. This is like by doing this, you're taking away rights from this group. You're taking away safety from this group. And like that's to me, a very obvious distinction.
Yes. Another thing too about that is that, it's genuine progress takes time. Like the civil rights for blacks took decades, and which is sad, but it's like that's just kind of how it is, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: a few years ago, I saw a poll about Republican support for gay marriage, and 76% were either in favor of it or they just didn't care. And it's like that's pretty high compared to 10 years ago or 12
That
years.
is gargantuan.
It's huge, and it's like that number is only going to get higher. So it's like whenever I see
I think some of that might be going down because of shit.
Because of this, yeah, that might happen.
But like sorry, I just want to say, like, if you went back to the 70s or 80s, even like Democrats wouldn't support that. Like a minority of Democrats would support gay marriage. Yeah, like the Clintons didn't even support gay marriage, like the 90s. So like or 2000s. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I was gonna say, it's I would love to see more mainstream acceptance of trans people's identities, right? Where it's just sort of okay, yeah, you're an adult and you're better off identifying as the other gender. Cool, fine. I hope you're happy and blah blah. But it's like what the trans activist movement is doing now. It's like they want like extreme acceptance in every single facet now. It's not like, hey, let's slowly kind of build up grassroots movement to, here's a law that discriminates against us. We got to get that overturned. Sort of. It's like, no, you want to like throw away centuries of biology in favor of feelings? Like that's not going to happen now.
It's also the wrong approach. Like, so both abortion and gay marriage were won over, especially Republicans, which say what you want, like, let's say conservative, liberal, let's say half the country. Yeah. Right. More or less. Even though both parties are minority parties in terms of, I think most people identify as independents, like you end up voting for one or the other, or you don't vote, or like, let's say conservatives, liberals, to be very broad. Yeah. Conservatives were won over on both of these things, not by attacking people, not by bashing people over the head, not by calling them bigots. They won abortion was won over with, to the Clintons' credit, safe, legal, and rare. Yeah. It was the best messaging you could have for abortion. Yes. And while there was always a staunch contingent of conservatives who there were single issue voters who were against it no matter what, like most people in America, even still, like the Hobbes decision is a minority decision in terms of voting. Like most Americans support abortion. They just support where that abortion can take place is really the wiggle room there. But a vast majority actually support some type of abortion, especially in terms in rape and incest, or the health of the mother. The whole no abortion, no matter what, is a very, very, very tiny belief. So that was abortion. Gay marriage was won over. The messaging was freedom. Yes. This is America. We're not taking anything away from anyone. Freedom. And that's what went over a lot of libertarians. If they didn't support them already. And conservatives, because they could go, look, if they love each other, they make good like that's fine. And not what the attack helicopters are doing, or it's just like complete destruction, defamation, threats, shutting people down. And that's not that's not a winning, like even people who are on the fence are going to be like this isn't like, I'm not going to support this. Right. Like, I'm not for what these people want. Look at what they're doing for like some pretty like basic questions, or like even I would say nuanced questions, but basic, like, should people with penises be able to be naked around children? Yeah. Like female children. That's not something that should just be like, whatever you say goes. Right. Exactly. Like, it should be a conversation. Yeah. Yeah.
But I hope J.K. Rowling, I
give her a lot of credit, because look, she could have said nothing. She could do nothing.
It's funny because she annoyed me a lot, like up until like a few years ago. But then I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's like a super woke, progressive feminist. But now I'm like I'm on her side on so many things now.
And you could tell she has said, like, listen to this podcast. It's not like this is her. These aren't just like clips from other interviews. Like, these are interviews with this podcast host, and she's saying, like, I am terrified with what has happened to the left. Yeah, like they are the authoritarian ones. I was always afraid of the right, and for years it did seem like the right who were culturally authoritarian. Yeah, and is completely shifted to the left, and she is shocked by it. And you can almost tell it's like, and she has people who mess, like the last episode I just listened to, she said there was a trans woman, I believe, was murdered in Germany. and a left-wing, she said, a left-wing friend of mine texted me and says, like, your words contributed to this. Like, contributed to the, I don't think it was that severe. It's more like contributed to the police not basically like putting in the effort to solve this crime, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, how could you draw that leap from me tweeting, like, there used to be a word for people who menstruate, to a trans woman being murdered in Germany?
Yeah.
And that's what these people honestly think. Like, they honestly believe this shit, which is just like, trans people are at higher risks of violence, from almost always from their partners, from people they know, just like we all are. We are all at much higher risks of violence. I literally practice domestic violence law, so I see it in all different capacities. As terrifying as random crime is, and it's way more terrifying, domestic violence, and I'm using that term very broadly here, let's just say, or just people, like, there's a much higher chance of being attacked by someone of your own race, your own gender, from your own community, someone you have a relationship with, whether a friend or a family member or a partner. I don't know the statistics on these, but I'm assuming that murder in Germany was not just like a bigot finding a trans person and killing them. Maybe it was. Sure. Maybe it was. And it does happen.
Yeah.
And also you have to say, it's like the COVID thing. Like, well, did this person die of COVID or die with COVID? It's like, well, was that person murdered because they are trans, or were they murdered and they were also trans? Right. Yeah. So I don't know exactly, but the vast majority of these crimes that trans people are marginalized, and what you said is, we want it to be more like, yes, we don't want anyone to be discriminated against. We want them to live fulfilling, healthy lives. We want that for anybody, because that makes everyone's lives better. Like, you don't want a bunch of miscreants out there. You don't want people who are dissatisfied with their life, that puts less value on their life and they put less value on your life. And but still, because they're like, that's why it's like, watch anything about serial killers. Listen to anything about serial killers. Who are they? They're killing prostitutes. They're a vulnerable population. And that's really terrible, but that's the reality of it. So it's not necessarily that they're being killed because they're trans. They're being killed because they're a vulnerable population. But so are women prisoners. So are young girls. So are prostitutes. So are, so are migrant male workers who don't have any papers. Like, these are vulnerable populations. That's what they're a higher risk of violence.
Right. Well, getting back to the left authoritarian thing.
Yeah.
Want to transition to our other topic?
Yes, I do.
So my
teeth. No, it's just my shot. It's my shot from my long ass nose.
Oh. Your last name's Pinocchio, right?
Close.
So Agatha Christie. So we've talked about Roald Dahl. His books have been sensitized by sensitivity readers. And then did we talk about Ian Fleming in the James Bond novels? Did we talk about that? I think we did.
Did we?
On it? Or maybe we were going to, and then it got.
I don't remember talking about them. Maybe. Okay,
maybe. I remember writing about it, so maybe that's what
I'm in and out of these podcasts. Like I'm paying attention like half the time.
Yeah.
When I'm not talking, I'm just not listening.
Well, yes. Well, it was just a quick recap. Ian Fleming, who wrote the original James Bond novels, his books are being scrubbed of anything potentially offensive, and now the latest author, Agatha Christie, who's most famous for 10 Little Indians.
Yo, these British writers dropping like flies.
That's true. It seems like HarperCollins is a really bad publisher. Like, they just don't give a shit.
Is that who this is?
Yeah, this is HarperCollins is doing it. So this came out recently. Agatha Christie novels have been rewritten for modern sensitivities. I don't know how to pronounce it. Poirot. He's the main detective guy. And Miss Marple, I don't know who any of these people are, have original passages reworked or removed in new editions published by HarperCollins. The new editions of Christie's works are set to be released or have been released since 2020, which is said by insiders to use services of sensitivity readers. Man, fuck. That's that whole industry is so stupid. Like it's just like the diversity inclusion industry.
Look, I'm very pro labor. I'm a huge labor advocate and union supporter.
Yep.
And I don't like the last thing I want is I'm really just so hesitant, even if I really disagree with someone or I really hate their guts. Like losing a job is so traumatic and horrible. I don't think sensitivity readers should exist. This job should it just get them all out. Absolutely not. Like I have no support for this profession whatsoever. It is a complete grift.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, absolutely. I read an article, I think it was in the Telegraph, from a sensitivity reader or editor, talking about what it is they do, and it's just like the mental gymnastics of like justifying what they do. It's just so bizarre. It's like, even if a writer writes something offensive, it's like, okay, but that's a representation of who they are. Like I want to see a pure distillation of the writer's mind. That's
like,
what I care about.
What if the character's racist and he's saying racist shit? Like you're supposed to hate him.
Yeah.
Do you take that stuff out and then at the end you're like, he wasn't so bad?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, so I have a few examples here, and I think one of them was actually that type of case where it was someone who was racist and they were saying racist things, and like their dialogue was scrubbed.
Why? So here are some examples of the newspaper reported that the edits cut references to ethnicity, such as describing a character as black, Jewish, or gypsy, or a female character's torso as of black marble, and a judge's Indian temper. I'm taking that term, love that. And remove terms such as Oriental and the N-word. I love this, by the way, sidebar. There's this tweet recently, this Asian guy tweeted, like I think a pretty famous guy. He's like, bring Oriental back. That shit made me feel like I had magical powers. So like gypsy, I've always said I discriminate against Australians and gypsies. They're the only two people groups I think should be allowed to discriminate against. And when I say gypsy, I mean like the ones who they're just criminals. Like I don't mean if you're like Romani, I'm not talking about that shit. Like I don't even know. I know that comes from a certain group in India and they come over here. No, I mean the people who are like pickpocketing you. Like they're criminals and they're just a criminal enterprise. So you can't describe someone as black. What? Like I think if you start describing their skin tone in like more detail, it'd be like creepier.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do. So one thing I will say, like, as much as sensitivity readers should not exist. Like that's a firm. Yeah. However, I do think like writers, as a writer, you should listen to like maybe what your editor has to say or what other books are doing or what readers are saying about things. And one of those is like, I do think there is this default that a lot of white people do, which is like you describe everyone else but white people in their skin color and things like that. And it's like, you just assume, and if you don't describe them, you assume they're white. And like, I do think that's wrong. Like you shouldn't do that. With characters, what I started doing, what I think I've always done, but maybe not, what I started doing is like, you don't bring up the race unless it's important. Like unless it's like part of the character development of the story or whatever, to bring up the race. And usually you do that with dialogue or you just kind of leave it up to the reader. You say like, okay, this character is from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and this is what they look like. But you don't say black. It's like, okay, you just assume they're black, right? But you don't necessarily have to say it. I don't know. I think you start saying like they were as black as like as the pitch night sky. It's like that's a little weird. Like and or like I think comedically sometimes you could. I've talked about if you're like she was as white as like tissue paper or something, you'd see right through her or something like that. But usually I just avoid skin color stuff. I know a writer who famously, do you know Heinlein?
Yeah. He did Starship Troopers, right?
He wrote Starship Troopers, which is one of my favorite movies. It's a good book. It's I have it over there. And one of his things is like he kind of messed with people with this, where he wrote Starship Troopers, and at the end he reveals that the main character is Filipino. And I think the whole movie, you're just kind of, or the whole book, you're just kind of assuming he's white.
Yeah.
And then he kind of drops it like at the very end, which is not how the movie goes. The movie, they're all white.
Yeah, but they're living in Brazil or something, right?
Argentina. They're from Buenos Aires, which, like, I mean, they are white there. They just speak Spanish.
Yeah.
They're pretty much all white. But yeah, it was very weird. Yes, it's a futuristic. There are fucking bugs on another planet. Like
I know, yeah.
But yeah, so that was one of them, and I think that he was kind of like proving a point there. So, but that being said, I don't think you should go back and change this from book already written.
Yeah.
So if someone's described as, you know, especially when it comes to things like Jewish, like a lot of times they're being described that way, usually by a character who's nasty and like a villain. Maybe not. If the writer's just being racist, like, okay, then the writer was racist, and that's part of this literary history.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, like, kind of like what you touched on, like where you know, where when you start to remove any outdated or even just straight up racist or any type of bigoted terminology that shows up in a writer's work from the past, you're also kind of doing the same thing to them, where you make it seem like, oh yeah, Agatha Christie, yeah, she didn't have a racist bone in her body. So yeah, she might have did. She may have,
or our definition of racism has changed. Like, what is like I say this, I've said this before. I'm reading for research for a book. I'm reading primary sources for the Underground Railroad, and there was a time where the super liberal, progressive abolitionists, like, these were the people who they thought, rightfully so, because these were the only people who not only thought black people shouldn't be slaves or shouldn't be less than, but actually equal to white people, which even not all abolitionists believed. They were using, I think it was, they were using colored, which was like the progressive thing. If you say colored now to someone, you're going to fucking jail.
I know.
Like, and that was, and then the kind of the de facto, the middle ground was Negro, and of course the very racist one was the N-word.
Right.
And so, like, things change, and that's historic. Like, that shows a progression. That shows how people talked at the time. That's historically accurate. So if you start having people in Along Came a Spider say, you know, these BIPOC pluses, like, that's just not going to fit.
Well, speaking of the N-word,
oh, great, love that stuff.
No, so Agatha Christie, one of her most famous novels is "And Then There Were None."
Yeah.
And the previous title before that was 10 Little Indians.
Oh yeah. Stop that.
I know. Well, I won't obviously say the name, but it was 10 little N-words. But here's the thing: she was from the UK, if I think.
Yes,
so. Did the N-word have
some British lady?
Did the N-word carry the same like power in the UK at that time in the early 20th century? Like
I mean, I clearly think the answer is no, because she made that her title, where but like, and I don't think, you know, she wasn't a far right wing type person who would make a provocative title for their idea. Like, I have no idea. Maybe she was conservative, maybe she was a liberal. I have no idea. But
like, if I remember correctly, I think the title was actually changed in her lifetime. I think they're saying, "Oh, this would not do well in other markets."
It changed in the 70s. It changed in right here under that 1977.
Was she still alive?
I don't know. I actually have that on my reading list. I think it's that one or Along Came a Spider. I can't remember. I think
she died in 76. So that was after,
right after she died. Yeah. I mean, I do think we have our rules, but they're like, I do think the N-word is an exception.
Right.
Like, I do think it's such a jarring word that to have it as the title, I'm not saying it should be removed from books like Huckleberry Finn.
Sure.
But like, to have that as a title where like you're just kind of walking by the Waterstones in London, and there's like, oh god damn, that's ruined my day. Like, I do think this is like, this isn't just, well, why that word? Well, there's a history there. Like, there's a violent history there. And I do think that it should be removed from something like a title on a novel. But I guess I don't know, maybe you could call me a hypocrite. Then if you're so free speech, like, well, I do think that there can be some exceptions made. I don't think that's when a lot of people are going to like the hill people are going to die on.
Yeah.
But like anything, it's slippery slope. Now look, and maybe
yeah.
you have a point. Like maybe
Right.
there's a point there. I'm okay with that being changed, which was changed 50, 60 years ago. 50 years ago. So, but yeah, like changing this other stuff where now you can't describe a character as black. You can't describe them as like first of all, if you just describe a character as Jewish, like that's just bad writing.
Yeah.
Like that's like what? Okay, it's just like shitty writing. So, like, can you say Herschel was Jewish? Like, I don't know.
Real quick about bad writing. Are you familiar with the author? He was from the 1800s. I think his name was Edward Bulwer Lytton. I think.
Not familiar.
So he was pretty popular in his day for a bit. But there is every year some literary organization holds an Edward Bulwer Lytton contest of who can write the worst opening line, because he's most famous for writing.
It was a dark and stormy night.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Yeah. Okay. I do know that's. And actually, what's so funny. So I had this book. I forget where I got it from. I lost it in one of my moves, but it was a book about like certain things in writing, like rules. It was like 500 rule or 100 rules for writing or whatever. Or there's like references to stuff, and one of them was like, don't use the term the lion's share because it's overplayed and stuff or whatever. Like, and there's all subjective, of course. And that was in there is like the infamous terrible first line. It was a dark and stormy night, which is so funny because my grandmother tried reading me that novel over and over again. And I almost think maybe there was some sort of subconscious thing there, but I have this vivid memory of my grandmother reading this one line to me over and over. And I kept interrupting her. And I kept not letting her continue with the book. And at the time, I was honestly like 7 or 8 or something. Yeah. And maybe younger than that. Maybe a little, I don't remember. And I was just being a dick. I was just like, oh, look at that. Like, oh, mom, okay, hold on. Or I'll be like, clap my hands or something. She could never get past this first line. And now looking back, maybe subconscious, it was like, no, this is just shitty writing. And you don't want to absorb this.
He actually coined some other phrases, though. Pursuit of the almighty dollar, the pen is mightier than the sword, and the dweller on the threshold.
So those are good. Those are very so. I'm
glad he just dropped the ball with that one.
It is such a terrible first line because unless you're in like Alaska during the summer, like every night is dark. That's such a that is fine. So there's a contest for.
Yes, it's been held since 1982. Of just who can come up with the worst opening line.
Do you have any other ones there?
No, I don't have like the actual winners.
I did know that there's a contest similar. I think it's for worst sex scene written in a novel, and some of them are so funny. Just how it's one of those things where like you could like someone could just you could line up like 10 different writers. You could take a Hemingway, Steinbeck, let's say Agatha Christie, Flannery O'Connor, there's like 10, 20 famous writers and tell them to describe like a landscape or a car or something. And they could all do it in their own style or whatever it is. Like somehow sex just doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think it's really hard to write sex in fiction or in literature. And because it just, I don't know, it's so visceral and but like so is violence and stuff. Yeah. I don't know why it is, but so many times when I read quote unquote sex scenes, I'm like, just okay, like let's move on. It's more of that maybe these characters are having sex and they shouldn't be, or they finally had sex and it's a release. It's like I don't need to hear about like she took his member into her mouth or something like that. It's like, I don't know. I've written sex in my books. A lot of times it's more just like guttural, visceral,
gay.
It's like quick. Actually, yes, there's some gay sex in my books. It's all just hardcore gay sex.
There was some guy, some author wrote this really amateurish Lovecraft inspired novel. I heard he wanted to become a better writer, but this is one of his first when it got published. And I just remember there was a sex scene. Yeah. But like the descriptions just like all of a sudden like they just became pornographic. Like it just went like in the actual like description, it was like, they saw each other, they embraced, and within minutes his cock was up her ass. I was like,
It's tough, and I think, and I don't know, I can't think of too many. I think why 50 Shades of Grey was so popular was because it was, I didn't read the book. I think I read some snippets here and there, just like see what all the fuss is about. And it's like, it's very, I think, to the point for a lot of it, but also I think some of it can be flowery, and also just like what the sex is, like the submissive, this like BDSM stuff, that obviously had been written before, but I think not to that, like one by a woman, like to a mass audience that just took off. But do you know what's sidebar here is in Always Sunny? You don't watch Always Sunny, do you?
No, I've watched clips of it.
Oh, there's this great scene where like it's around this time. I actually just watched this episode, rewatched it, and Dennis decides like he's going to turn his memoirs into a novel, like his journal entries, I should say, into memoirs. And like he thinks, because this is when 50 Shades came out, it's probably like 20 whenever, or like whenever it was, and like his writing is so bad, but he's just like reading it. It's really sensual voice. It's like, and then he pulled down her pants and he did her, and he stuck it in there, and they did it. He slid inside of her and she took him there. And I feel like that's a lot of writers when they're writing sex scenes, like that's how they think they're nailing it.
I
don't know, maybe I'll read some of my sex scenes on the pod, and we'll see if I can turn you on. That should be a segment. Let's turn on Joe.
It didn't work. Try again.
Didn't work.
Real quick, one of the funniest changes that were made in one of Agatha Christie's novels, it was actually had to do with her description of children. It wasn't even like a racist thing, as far as I can tell. So I know, yeah. So here's what she originally wrote. They come back and stare, and their eyes are simply disgusting, and so are their noses. And I don't believe I really like children. Like, what's wrong with that? It just seems like a snobby woman. Like, but then it's been stripped down to they come back and stare, and I don't believe I really like children. I was like, oh, come on. I like the part where she's, getting all like they're simply disgusting, and so are their noses. Like,
yeah, that shows such a disdain, like this character's disdain for.
It's very British. This seems like such a British, like, and their noses.
Well, I think all this is dumb. I think very little should ever be changed from any of this, even from just just from like a historical standpoint.
Yeah.
Like why change this stuff? It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Right.
And first of all, who's reading Agatha Christie and being like, oh, this is offensive?
I highly doubt that there's like a blue-haired communist who's like,
or like 16-year-old like crits reading this and being like, burn it.
No. Well, yeah, I also just the idea, because Agatha Christie, she's a pretty important author in like the mystery and crime genre, and it's just sort of like this idea of like, our heroes have to be spotless. It's like, yes, especially heroes from the past, they had some views that were not very savory these days. Fucking deal with it.
It's also, I don't even like ascribing views to stuff like novels like that scares me as someone who writes fiction. It's like I have views, and some of them do come through my novels. Some of them may have changed. I don't want you being like reading this to be like, oh, this is his view on this. Exactly. Like I don't know if I necessarily want that. And and yeah, even on like the PBS Great American Read, where it was like the top 100 books, one of her books was on there, like top 100 most popular books in America. I think it was Along Came a Spider. I get that, and then because I haven't read either of them yet, so so I get confused which one's which. But I think it was Along Came a Spider was on there, so very popular.
Well, all
right.
I know it's a bad day for books.
It's a bad day for books. Stop burning books, psychos. Just cut it out. Stop destroying books. Stop changing them. Just let them be. Yeah, just let books be, and go write your own book with everything that you want in it. It's never been easier to do that, actually. It's never been an easier time to publish your own book.
And don't fucking complain if 10 years from now some other piece of shit, sensitivity reader, fucks up your beautiful, perfect vision.
I should find a sensitivity reader to read some of my books and just see what comes back, and then we could put that on the pod.
Yeah. If you could find one where it was like you get a free trial or something, or it's like, hey, can you just 20 pages? Can you just?
All right, I'm actually gonna look into that and see. That'd
be pretty funny.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna look into it. I don't know. It depends how much it costs.
Yeah.
I'm not like if it's like getting editing, like no, that shit's expensive as fuck. Like I'm not doing that. But if it's like some college like English lit major or something, I'll be like, hey, I just wrote. I like won't even say it's published. I was like, hey, I just wrote can you read this manuscript? And I want to see what comes back.
Yeah, that'd be a fun little experiment.
I'll get charged for like murder because like those die from an aneurysm.
Oh man, yeah. Look into that. Yeah, I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Like maybe there's some who will do a chapter for free or something like that. Like just maybe. But I guess for a free sample.
I'm actually gonna look into that, and we'll maybe make that episode.
Oh man, so I know I've mentioned on here how I wrote an article on Medium about that segregated DEI session from a few years back. And then a very woke publication called An Injustice reached out to me and asked if they could publish the article. And I thought, this is weird. Like I'm criticizing you guys, but sure, okay, publish it. Like give me lots of reads. And then they got kicked out of the publication. What I should have done, because they actually left a note saying, let us know if you want us to give you feedback on why we took your article out of the publication. I didn't follow up because that would have been so much fucking fun just to see like. So I'm criticizing segregation. I thought that was cool. I thought segregation was bad.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna look into sensitivity reader. That would be really funny, actually.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, stay reckless, I suppose,
and fight some crits.
Fight
with
crits.
ideas, not with your.
Yes, obviously, we always mean with your ideas. Fight them.
Don't burn them.
We only burn witches.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, bye, everybody.
Adios.